Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Taco Trump is back at it, giving China yet another tariff extension. So much for playing hardball. What explains Trump's weakness on China? We'll tell you about the leverage that Beijing has over Washington. Also, Trump's latest faux pas, he said he's going to Russia when in fact Alaska is in the US. He may propose a land swap. We'll tell you what it entails and why he's telling the world to not expect much from his meeting with Putin. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Narendra Modi speaks to Ukraine's President Zelensky. We'll tell you what they discussed and whether the Indian Prime Minister will travel to the US next month. Also in focus, why Trump has taken control of the police and deployed the National Guard to Washington D.C. How Pakistan is reeling under the Munir effect. After the army chief's statement about bombing half the world, Bilawal Bhutto is threatening war. Back home, India's top court says it is time to remove stray dogs. But the ruling has sparked a debate and a backlash. We'll tell you why. What did the Intel CEO do to get into the US president's good books? Why is the world's biggest sovereign wealth fund pulling out of Israel? And how Gen Z is using ChatGPT for everything, from homework to heartbreak. Is this a generation outsourcing life itself? Also, our Independence Day special series, we talk about India's gifts to the world, the legacy that keeps on giving. All this and more coming up. The headlines first. At least 9 Pakistani soldiers killed in Balochistan after militants attacked a police station in the country's restive province. Monday's attack is the latest in a string of deadly assaults claimed by the group. It coincided with the US listing the Baloch Liberation Army or BLA as a foreign terrorist organization. A landmine blast near Cambodia's border injures a Thai soldier. Bangkok accuses Phnom Penh of planting new explosives and breaching last month's truce between the two countries. In July, border clashes erupted between Thailand and Cambodia. The violence killed at least 43 people and displaced thousands. Israel's defense minister pulls up the country's military chief over appointments made without his approval. This comes amid escalating tensions between the military and the executive. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu plans to take control of the Gaza city. The army chief is reportedly against the move. Syria's foreign minister meets a senior Kurdish official in Damascus days after the government boycotted talks in France. Damascus refused to participate after the Kurds hosted Syria's Druze and Alawite minority communities. Both these groups have faced sectarian violence in recent months. South African police fire rubber bullets at residents who tried to block their eviction from houses near Johannesburg. The angry residents protested by throwing stones at the police and torching a municipal building. There is a severe housing crisis in South Africa and homelessness has risen dramatically in the country. He's done it again. Taco. Trump has chickened out, this time from punishing China. He's given them another extension, another 90 days for the tariffs to kick in. And this came just hours before the last deadline expired. Trump signed a new executive order. And he averted a full-blown trade war with the world's second largest economy. In doing this, he gave another demonstration of his double standards. For the past 2 weeks, the US president has been waging a trade war with India. Trump has all but declared an economic war on New Delhi. He's raised tariffs on India to 50%. He says India buys Russian oil, so they must face tariffs. But guess what? China buys more Russian oil than India, and yet Donald Trump is letting that slide. He's given Beijing another 3-month extension to negotiate. This means the new deadline is November. The US and China have until November to work out a deal and avoid the harshest tariffs. Without this extension, tariffs on Chinese imports would have jumped to 145%. And China was ready to match that. It had planned a 125% duty on US imports. These were the levels they'd set in April. That's when Trump first rolled out his sweeping tariffs. Then in the month of May, both sides agreed to scale them back. This was after talks in Geneva. And Trump's latest move simply extends that truce. For the moment, the US will keep its rate at 30% and China's levy stays at 10%. This is the second extension for China, and here's how Trump explained his decision.
We've been dealing very nicely with China, as you probably have heard. They have tremendous tariffs that they're paying to the United States of America, and we'll see what happens. They've been dealing quite nicely. The relationship is very good with President Xi and myself.
Trump makes it sound like he's close to a breakthrough. But make no mistake, he knows that he's on the back foot and he's just buying time. Tariffs on China have pushed him into a corner. So now he's extending deadlines because there is no off-ramp. There is no clear exit strategy. In this trade war, China has found choke points. It has identified areas where it can hurt the US. And Beijing is pressing those pain points. There are two main ones. First, the pressure of holiday imports. Every year, American retailers stock up for Christmas season. It's the biggest shopping period of the year for them, and that means a surge in imports during autumn. Most of these goods come from China. If Trump allowed tariffs to rise now, retailers would be forced to pay more, and products would become more expensive. So either retailers would have lost profit, or consumers would have had to pay extra. Trump's extension has prevented that. It will keep the prices in check, at least for now. Having said that, China can still hurt the US. It can still delay or slow down exports. And it can do this right when American retailers need those goods the most. So that's the first leverage that China has. The second is rare earth magnets. These are critical for US manufacturers. Earlier this year, China curbed their supplies. Then, as part of a truce, they eased the exports, and those supplies have just started to recover. If Beijing wants, it can shut the tap again. So it has two levers that it can pull. China can punish US retailers, and it can hurt America's rare earth supplies. So what happens next? There's talk of a Trump-Xi summit, possibly to end the trade impasse once and for all. The meeting could happen later this year. Reports say there's one window for late October. But a meeting with Xi Jinping is no guarantee of relief for the US. Instead of letting off Trump easy, Xi Jinping may widen the agenda. He may put more issues on the table, like duties linked to fentanyl trafficking, Chinese purchases of Russian and Iranian oil, and disputes over US companies operating in China. Each of these issues is a pressure point, and if Beijing stacks them up, the trade war will only get harder for Trump to escape. And that is why Wall Street gave him a nickname. They call him Taco. Trump always chickens out, TACO. He starts with big threats. He pushes until there is a response, either from the markets or a country's leadership. And when America starts feeling the pressure, Trump backs down. China realizes this, and it appears to be in no rush to give the US president a way out.
You know, I'm going to see Putin. I'm going to Russia on Friday.
The Cold War is long over, but even today, when the US and Russian presidents meet, there is excitement, there is mystery. Perhaps it's because of the history, perhaps it's the offbeat venues. Or who knows, maybe it's just Western propaganda. Whatever the reason, the build-up is significant, and we are seeing that right now. President Donald Trump will meet President Vladimir Putin on Friday. The venue is an old Cold War front line, the icy American state of Alaska. It's not clear where in Alaska they will meet, but the trip itself is significant. This will be Putin's first visit to America since 2015, also the first by a Russian leader to Alaska. So lots of symbolism going around. But what about the agenda? Naturally, it's all about Ukraine. Trump will be pushing Putin to end the war in Ukraine, and Putin will be sticking to his concerns. This is their first meeting since the last Trump presidency, so both men will be looking to size each other up. It's equal parts policy and mind games. And Trump is not off to the best of starts. He slipped up twice in a press conference yesterday. He said he was flying to Russia instead of Alaska.
This is an emergency. This is a tragic emergency. And it's embarrassing for me to be up here. You know, I'm going to see Putin. I'm going to Russia on Friday. I don't like being up here talking about how unsafe and how dirty and disgusting this once beautiful capital was. Look, let's just do this. Let's do this. It's going to be a big thing. We're going to Russia. That's going to be a big deal. What happens, happens. I'll let you know what happens. You'll be the first to know. I'll be calling the European leaders.
I guess the self-proclaimed genius is slowing down. He probably thought, what's cold, white, and far from Washington? It's Russia, but also Alaska. But gaffe aside, what is Trump's plan? What is he hoping to achieve? The US president is trying to manage expectations. He says Friday is sort of like a feel-out.
This is really a feel-out meeting, a little bit. And President Putin invited me to get involved. He wants to get involved. I believe he wants to get it over with. I'm going to go and see the parameters. Now, I may leave and say, good luck, and that'll be the end. I may say this is not going to be settled. And at the end of that meeting, probably in the first 2 minutes, I'll know exactly whether or not a deal can be made.
How will you know that?
Because that's what I do. I make deals.
That's not a bad idea. The last thing you want is to oversell it. Because if the meeting falls apart, you look stupid. So underselling is the right idea. Plus, there is already a template for peace. The Kremlin outlined it in June. Ukraine must give up NATO ambitions. It must limit the size of its army. It must recognize Russian sovereignty over occupied lands. It must declare Russian as an official language. And finally, the West must remove all sanctions on Russia. These are Putin's demands. They're extreme. But then again, Russia is winning on the battlefield. Which brings us to the other side, Ukraine. They're sending out mixed signals. Some reports say Zelensky is ready to freeze the front lines, meaning Russia will keep the occupied lands. But in public, the Ukrainian president is defiant.
The answer to the Ukrainian territorial question already is in the constitution of Ukraine. No one will deviate from this, and no one will be able to. Ukrainians will not gift their land to the occupier.
Now, this has enraged Trump because the US president is proposing land swaps. Reports hint at a vague proposal. Russia will gain formal control of annexed regions, that's Crimea, Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson. In return, Ukraine will get some parts from the east, maybe a few pockets in Zaporizhia and Kherson. This is reportedly Trump's plan.
I was a little bothered by the fact that Zelensky was saying, well, I have to get constitutional approval. I mean, he's got approval to go into war and kill everybody, but he needs approval to do a land swap because there'll be some land swapping going on. I know that through Russia and through conversations with everybody to the good, for the good of Ukraine. Good stuff, not bad stuff. Also, some bad stuff for both. So there's good and there's bad. But it's very complex because you have lines that are very uneven, and there'll be some swapping, there'll be some changes in land.
That was Trump struggling to define a land swap. But this is sounding a lot like the early 20th century, a war fought in trenches, big powers meeting in icy capitals, and presidents carving up a third country. In this case, Trump is right. Ukraine will have to make concessions. They're running low on soldiers and weapons. Meanwhile, Russia is gaining. They're advancing across the 1,000-kilometer-long front line, so Zelensky has to make a choice. Does he want to sacrifice more men in an unwinnable war, or does he want to end the suffering? Right now, Zelensky seems confused. Last week, he said Putin appeared open to peace. But now he says Russia is planning more attacks.
It seems that Russia is now more inclined to agree to a ceasefire. The pressure on them is working. Putin is definitely not preparing for a ceasefire or an end to the war. Putin is determined only to present a meeting with America as his personal victory and then continue acting exactly as before.
So which is it? Is Putin more inclined to a ceasefire, or is he not? Adding to this confusion is Europe. They too are refusing to accept the reality. Brussels has two main demands. One, they want a seat at the peace table, but Trump is keeping them out. He has not invited European leaders to Alaska on Friday. Forget Europe. He has not even invited Zelensky yet. And second, Europe wants no concessions to be made. They want to preserve all of Ukraine's land. Ideally, Zelensky would like Brussels to be at the table because they would back him up, which is also why Trump is not inviting them. He knows Europe will shoot down any concessions. Still, there is no guarantee of success. The meeting is unlikely to produce a breakthrough, but it could shape future tactics. Trump will understand where Putin stands, and Putin will understand where Trump stands. It gives both sides a chance to talk and then recalibrate. Friday cannot come soon enough. Alaska is almost 13 hours behind India. Noon in Alaska is way past midnight in New Delhi. But I'll tell you what, Indian diplomats will not be rushing to bed on Friday. They will be keeping a close watch because India has a lot at stake. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is personally involved. He's reached out to both sides. Prime Minister Modi spoke to President Putin last Friday, and he spoke to President Zelensky yesterday. And here's what he told the Ukrainian leader. I'm quoting. The Prime Minister reaffirmed India's steadfast and consistent position for peaceful settlement of the conflict and support for efforts aimed at earliest restoration of peace. The Prime Minister reiterated India's commitment to extend all possible support in this regard. It's a pretty standard statement. India has always called for peace in Ukraine. We have demanded talks instead of war. Ukraine's statement is more expansive. It reveals how Zelensky briefed Prime Minister Modi on recent attacks, especially the aerial bombardments. It also mentions the Russian oil imports. Again, let me quote. The president emphasized the need to restrict exports of Russian energy sources, particularly oil, to reduce Russia's potential and ability to finance the war. He underscored that it is important for every leader with tangible leverage over Russia to send the corresponding signals to Moscow. Let me translate that for you. Zelensky wants Prime Minister Modi to stop buying Russian oil. He is indirectly saying that countries like India are financing the war. It's not a wise diplomatic move. Nonetheless, Zelensky recognizes the importance of India. He later recounted Prime Minister Modi's famous words to Putin. This is not an era for war.
Today, Indian Prime Minister Modi and I discussed in great detail the possibilities for influencing Russia's position. I remember how the Prime Minister of India has said more than once that our time is not a time for war, and real steps are needed to make this a reality. Peace is needed.
Ukraine's statement also has two interesting bits. One, a reference to the Alaska talks. Again, let me quote from what it says. The leaders share a common position. Everything concerning Ukraine must be decided with Ukraine's participation. Other formats will not yield results. Now, this is slightly odd because as things stand, there is no Ukrainian participation. Zelensky will not be in Alaska. Yet, India has endorsed the summit. New Delhi says it holds the promise of ending the war. That's the first interesting part. The second is a proposed Modi-Zelensky meeting. Kiev says it's being planned in New York on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly in September. And why is this interesting? Because India has not announced such a trip yet. The Prime Minister has trips to China and Japan lined up. He's got a busy election schedule at home, so it's not clear if he will travel to New York. Plus, there's the Trump angle. This will be Trump's first UNGA after returning to office. I'm sure he will be keen to address the assembly, maybe make another pitch for a Nobel Peace Prize. So amid the souring ties, will Modi visit New York? His last UNGA address was in 2021. Since then, Foreign Minister Jaishankar has delivered India's statement. Last year, the Prime Minister did visit New York, but he addressed a different UNGA session, not the general debate. This time, the UN website does list Prime Minister Modi as a speaker, but we haven't heard from New Delhi yet. And it's not an easy decision to make. On the one hand, this promises to be a landmark UNGA session. Multiple Western countries will recognize Palestine. Most of their leaders will be in New York, plus Trump will be there. He has a great personal equation with Prime Minister Modi. Will India give the US president one last chance? Or will they stay away amid souring ties? That's the dilemma for New Delhi. A lot will depend on the meeting in Alaska. If there's a breakthrough, Trump may lift his secondary tariffs, though at the moment, he seems to love them.
They're not doing well. Their economy is not doing well right now because it's been very well disturbed by this. It doesn't help when the President of the United States tells their largest or second largest oil buyer that we're putting a 50% tariff on you if you buy oil from Russia. That was a big blow.
If the tariffs are lifted, things become easier. That's one less irritant between India and the US. If not, things will remain complicated. A prime ministerial trip is a statement in itself. Let's see how India plays it.
We're going to take our capital back. We're taking it back. Deploying the National Guard in Washington, D.C., and they're going to be allowed to do their job properly.
Every president promises to keep America safe, but Donald Trump is taking it one step further. He's taking over Washington, D.C., the capital of the United States. Why? To make it safe again. Trump is taking temporary federal control of D.C.'s police department. He is sending in National Guard troops.
I'm announcing a historic action to rescue our nation's capital from crime, bloodshed, bedlam, and squalor, and worse. This is Liberation Day in D.C., and we're going to take our capital back. We're taking it back.
Trump calls it Liberation Day, but the whole thing looks like a siege. Trump declared that he was rescuing the capital. Rescuing from what? Chaos, bloodshed, and gangs. And he's using an old federal act for this. The 1973 Home Rule Act, a clause in it allows the president to take over DC's police force, but only during an emergency. And that's what Trump is calling it, an emergency. Also, he's not just taking over the cops, he's sending in soldiers, 800 National Guard troops. They will be in the US Capitol. But only a fraction of them will be on the streets at any point in time. The Pentagon says they will not patrol openly, that they're there only for logistical support.
For 3-4 years, I've watched them. The police are standing, and they're told, don't do anything under any such, and you can see they want to get at it. And they're standing there, and people are spitting in their face, and they're not allowed to do anything. But now they are allowed to do whatever the hell they want.
Now, Washington, D.C. is not like other cities. It's not a state. It does not get a vote in Congress. For most of its history, it was run directly by presidential appointees. The Home Rule Act of 1973 changed that. It gave locals the right to elect a mayor and a council. But it also gave the president emergency powers. That power is supposed to be temporary, 48 hours unless the Congress is notified. Trump has already promised to stretch that. He wants control for 30 days and maybe beyond. And this has never happened before. US presidents rarely use this power, let alone exercise it for a month. This has left the city's administration in a flux. The city is currently controlled by Democrats, and they are pushing back.
And while this action today is unsettling and unprecedented, I can't say that given some of the rhetoric of the past, that we're totally surprised. I can say to DC residents that we will continue to operate our government in a way that makes you proud. We will balance our budgets. We will deploy our services.
Now, here is where things get murky. Trump paints D.C. as a war zone, but the numbers suggest otherwise. Violent crime is at a 30-year low. In 2023, the city saw crime spike with increased homicides and assaults, but the numbers have fallen since then. In 2024, violent crime dropped by 35%. Early 2025 data shows further declines. Murders are down by 12%. Assaults with dangerous weapons down by 20%. Even carjackings are down by 37%. So is there crime in D.C.? Absolutely there is. But is it spiraling out of control right now? The numbers say no. Then why is Trump cracking down? The reason could be more personal. Earlier this month, a 19-year-old former DOD staffer was attacked. It was an alleged carjacking attempt, and Trump posted this image. He declared that D.C. failed to protect him. Days later, the federal takeover was on. And it's not just about Washington, D.C. This is making mayors in other Democratic cities uneasy. As you know, Trump belongs to the Republican Party. And this is not the first time that he has targeted a Democratic stronghold. He sent the National Guard to Los Angeles. He wanted a military crackdown in Chicago. He suggested the same for New York. If D.C. is a success, there may be no stopping him. Critics say he could try the same in Democratic strongholds, all in the name of maintaining law and order, and he did hint at that.
It's a threat to our country. We have other cities also that are bad, very bad. You look at Chicago, how bad it is. You look at Los Angeles, how bad it is. We have other cities that are very bad. New York has a problem. And then you have, of course, Baltimore and Oakland. We don't even mention that anymore. They're so far gone. We're not going to let it happen. We're not going to lose our cities over this.
So what happens next? Legally, Trump cannot go past 30 days without Congress approval. Politically, he can stretch this for as long as it's useful. Maybe it fizzles quietly. Maybe it turns into a months-long battle over local control. Either way, it is a distraction from the Epstein files, from Trump's economic struggles, and from his failing trade war. And that's what is dangerous. Trump is willing to put boots on the ground in the capital to distract America. Today it's Washington, D.C. Tomorrow it could be any other city. There's a new competition in Pakistan. It's a twist on Simon Says. You do and say whatever Simon says, or in this case, whatever Asim Munir says. The Pakistan Army chief has thrown down the gauntlet. The task is to threaten India, and he set a very high bar over the weekend. Munir threatened to nuke half the world. He also talked about blowing up dams. No half measures there. Munir started at an 11. Now it was the turn of Pakistani politicians. First up was Bilawal Bhutto. He is threatening to wage war against India. Over what? The waters of River Indus. India and Pakistan had a deal to share this water. But after the Pahalgam attack, India suspended the deal. New Delhi gave a clear message to Islamabad: blood and water will not flow together. But Bilawal has a problem with that. He is urging Pakistanis to unite and take on India.
इस मुल्क के अवाम में इतना ताकत है कि जंग की सूरत हो तो जंग में भी हम इनका मुकाबला कर सकते हैं और जो आपके 6 के 6 दरिया है वो वापस हासिल भी कर सकते हैं। और अगर ये हमें मजबूर करते हैं, पाकिस्तान ने ये जंग नहीं छेड़ा था, हम हमेशा अमन के बारे में बात करते हैं। आप सिंधु की तरफ इस किस्म की हमला के बारे में सोचेंगे तो फिर पाकिस्तान के हर सूबे के अवाम आपका मुकाबला करने के लिए तैयार है और ये ऐसे जंग है जो आप ज़रूर हारेंगे।
Bilawal brought his accent, but he forgot statesmanship at home. This is a former foreign minister of Pakistan. He leads one of their biggest political parties. He is in coalition with the ruling party, yet look at his language. Look at his tone. Certainly not befitting a wannabe prime minister. For Bilawal Bhutto, there are two goals here. First is to rally his support base. His party is called the PPP, the Pakistan People's Party. It rules the province of Sindh. That is the core of their political support. And in Sindh, water is a key issue. Shortages were a problem even before the treaty suspension, so you can imagine the situation now. What Bilawal is doing is capitalizing on that plight. He is using water to boost his image. And secondly, he is trying to appease Munir, though he's not doing a good job of it. Munir channeled his inner Aladdin from the dictator, but Bilawal is more like Team Rocket. And we are not the only ones saying this. Munir's comments are worrying a lot of people, like former Pentagon official Michael Rubin. He probably summed it up best. Rubin says Asim Munir sounded like Osama bin Laden.
Asim Munir is Osama bin Laden in a suit. The fact of the matter is, there is no amount of concession that can be given to Pakistan that is going to change the ideology of Asim Munir or the Pakistani elite which he represents. This is why I'm saying that Pakistan is playing a very dangerous game. And while it may sound radical, the fact that Pakistan is now threatening half the world with nuclear weapons, it's threatening to blow up Indian dams and so forth, is an indication that Pakistan has lost its right to be a legitimate state on the international stage.
There's a clear campaign here. New reports say Pakistan is targeting Indian diplomats in Islamabad. How? By denying them basic utilities. We're talking about things like cooking gas and water. At the High Commission, the gas pipelines are empty. Reports say supply has been cut off. Indian staff cannot find gas cylinders either. The official vendors have stopped selling to them. So the staff is turning to the open market. Same with water. Drinking water sellers have been given clear instructions. Do not sell to the Indian High Commission. Even newspapers have been curbed. Vendors have stopped delivering papers to the High Commission. Why is Pakistan doing this? Indian officials are calling it petty retaliation. And it's on point for Islamabad. They have a history of targeting Indian diplomats, whether it's cutting off utilities or spying on them or tailing their cars. Needless to say, this is against international rules. The Geneva Convention says host countries must protect foreign diplomats. But who are we kidding? Their army chief is threatening to nuke half the world, so this is hardly surprising. The question is, what is the end goal here? What explains this warmongering? One possible reason is to re-establish deterrence. Pakistan's deterrence was shattered by India. Our missiles hit Pakistani bases at will, so Munir and company are working hard to restore it by constantly threatening war. Secondly, Islamabad senses a diplomatic opening. They know that Donald Trump is on their side. They also know that India's ties with the US have soured. So maybe Islamabad is capitalizing on that. We say good luck. India does not need a godfather to take on Pakistan. Our military is more than capable. We also don't need anyone to broker a ceasefire. The BrahMos did a good job at that. But these reckless statements do expose Pakistan's truth. Their whole existence is geared towards India, towards accusing India, towards deterring India, and towards attacking India. It's dangerous, but frankly, also sad. If you visit New Delhi, you will for sure notice one thing. Street dogs, they're everywhere. The national capital and its surroundings are home to 1 million strays. Now, India's Supreme Court wants to change that. It wants these dogs to be put in a shelter within 8 weeks. It wants the streets to be dog-free. But this plan has been met with a lot of backlash. Animal groups say there aren't enough shelters in the capital. Activists fear that this will lead to culling and inhuman practices. So on paper, the court's plan sounds neat. It's the boldest step India has taken in decades on this issue. But in practice, it is a logistical Everest. Will it work? Or will it cause more chaos than calm? And what have other countries done to address this issue? Our next report tells you.
India's Supreme Court has decided to step in and quite literally clear the streets of New Delhi. The judges were done with the headlines about children mauled in public parks, elderly people attacked on morning walks, and the stubborn rise of rabies cases. Their solution? Move every stray dog in the national capital region into shelters. More importantly, do it in just 8 weeks. The argument for the Supreme Court's decision is simple and emotive. Safety first for the residents of the national capital. India accounts for 36% of the world's rabies deaths. WHO estimates 18,000 to 20,000 deaths a year. Government data believes the numbers are far lesser. Either way, that's not a comforting statistic. Meanwhile, the stray dog population has touched 1 million in Delhi and suburbs. There were over 35,000 animal bite incidents in just 6 months this year. For supporters, this is decisive action in a country where dog control measures have historically been slow, patchy, and stuck in bureaucracy. But the backlash was instant and loud. The Supreme Court wants dogs to be moved to shelters. First, there is a capacity problem. India's shelters can barely house 1% of the dogs they'd need to accommodate under this plan. Building facilities for lakhs of dogs across multiple zones in under 2 months is not a realistic target. Animal groups worry that this order could lead to inhumane treatment or quiet culling, despite official assurances to the contrary. Currently, India's animal birth control rules follow a sterilize, vaccinate, and return approach. Dogs once neutered are sent back to their original territory. The Supreme Court has now called this absurd, arguing it does nothing to prevent attacks. Critics of the model agree it's poorly implemented. But defenders say the problem is execution, not the idea itself. If India is looking for inspiration, there are plenty of global case studies, none involving mass removal in 8 weeks. The Netherlands has a zero-stray model, but this was achieved through decades of sterilization drives, strict pet registration laws, hefty fines for abandonment, and sky-high adoption rates. Bhutan followed a 14-year-long plan. The country sterilized and vaccinated every single street dog with help from NGOs, volunteers, and a strong community network. Singapore has a trap, neuter, release, manage plan. There is human trapping, microchipping, sterilization, and rehoming where possible. Remaining dogs are managed and monitored in their territories. So is there a better way to tackle this problem? What India can truly look at is a hybrid approach. It could borrow from the Netherlands' legal strictness, Bhutan's slow sterilization success, and Singapore's community-managed model. Pair that with Delhi-specific measures like better garbage control and robust public awareness campaigns. The Supreme Court wants safety for citizens, and that's a goal no one disputes. But history, both in India and abroad, suggests that sudden sweeps don't bring about humane and lasting change. It comes from figuring out how humans and dogs can live side by side, without fear on either end of the leash.
It's not easy being a tech CEO in America these days. Just ask Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple. A few months ago, he was in Trump's crosshairs. The US president was threatening tariffs on iPhones. But Cook managed to dodge that bullet, at least for now. He handed a gift made of 24-karat gold, and just like that, the tariff talk disappeared. And now Intel CEO is trying something similar. His name is Lip Bhutan. Last week, Trump wanted him sacked. He called him, and I'm quoting, highly conflicted, and demanded his immediate removal. But that was last week. Today, Trump has a different take. He met the Intel boss at the White House. We don't know what happened behind closed doors, but whatever it was, it has got Trump singing a completely different tune. He wrote about the meeting on Truth Social. Allow me to quote from what he wrote. Tan's success and rise is an amazing story. Mr. Tan and my cabinet members are going to spend time together and bring suggestions to me during the next week. The very man Trump wanted gone is now being held up as an American success story. How did that happen? What did Tan do? He seems to have taken a cue from Tim Cook's playbook. He moved fast to mend fences. He publicly aligned himself with Trump and his policies. Last week, Tan wrote to Intel employees. He said, and I'm quoting, "I fully share the president's commitment to advancing U.S. national and economic security. I appreciate his leadership to advance these priorities, and I'm proud to lead a company that is so central to these goals." So Tan endorsed Trump and pledged his loyalties to the president. It's not like he had an option. Intel is a company in crisis. Its previous CEO was Patrick Gelsinger. He was removed last year because Intel had been falling behind rivals like NVIDIA. NVIDIA is dominating the AI game. It makes the most advanced chips. They power the world's most sophisticated AI models. And Intel, it's nowhere to be seen, which is why Tan was brought in to reverse the situation, to boost Intel's fortunes. He took over in March and set out two new priorities for Intel. First, make inroads in the market for AI chips, and second, regain share in the personal computer space. Make better chips to power computers. In fact, Intel is now investing heavily to catch up, and it had support from the Biden administration. Trump's predecessor, Joe Biden, he had passed the CHIPS Act. This was to boost semiconductor manufacturing in the US. And through this act, Intel received $8.5 billion in government funding. The money was meant to set up new plants to make chips in places like Arizona, Ohio, and New Mexico. But Trump has been an open critic of the CHIPS Act, and a public tirade with the CEO would have made matters worse. So Tan swung into action to avert the crisis. I couldn't believe it. Of course, he's not the only one making such moves. Yesterday, we told you about NVIDIA. They too have negotiated with the White House. NVIDIA was banned from selling chips to China, their H20 chips. And this would have hurt because China is a major market for them. So the NVIDIA boss met Trump. And within days, the ban was reversed. So NVIDIA can now start selling chips to China again on one condition. They will have to give a cut to the US government.
I deal with Jensen, who's a great guy, and NVIDIA. So I just wanted, so when I say I want 20, I want for the country. I only care about the country. I don't care about myself. And he said, would you make it 15? So we negotiated a little deal.
So 15% of their revenue from chip sales. NVIDIA will have to give this to Washington. Same with AMD. That's another chip maker. It has got the same clearances. For a 15% revenue share, it can sell chips to China. Remember, tech CEOs were among the biggest supporters of Donald Trump. You may have seen these pictures from the inauguration. The president surrounded by America's biggest tech bosses, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, Tim Cook, Sundar Pichai, and of course, Elon Musk. They were all there, betting on Trump, hoping to win his backing in return. But now they must deal with Trump's protection racket, where you have to make pledges, you have to commit money and feed the president's ego to keep your business safe. And speaking of money, Norway is sending a message with its money. It controls the world's largest sovereign wealth fund. It's basically a state-owned fund that invests in financial markets, real estate, and other assets. The Norwegian fund is worth nearly $2 trillion. This fund held stakes in 11 Israeli companies. But now those investments are gone, and the reason is the war in Gaza. The move follows a storm in Oslo. There was a row over Norway's investments in an Israeli defense company. It made parts for Israel's fighter jets, the same jets that are bombing Gaza. This controversy has forced Norway to pull out all its investments in Israel. And for Israel, this is more than a financial hit. This is a symbolic blow because the world's biggest investor has decided to walk away over the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Here's a report.
Norway's sovereign wealth fund is the biggest in the world. It is worth almost $2 trillion. It is managed by Norway's central bank, and it owns shares in more than 8,700 companies worldwide. As of June 30th, the fund had stakes in 61 Israeli companies. This week, it sold all its shares in 11 of them.
The pension fund has completely divested from 11 Israeli companies. This divestment began last week and was completed today. Agreements with external managers in Israel have been terminated.
The divestment covers companies based in Israel. It also includes companies outside Israel that have strong links to the country. The fund also ended relationships with certain external managers. These managers handled Israeli investments on its behalf. The fund's CEO, Nikolai Tangin, cited extraordinary circumstances for this decision. He said the humanitarian crisis in Gaza had influenced the decision, but a recent controversy could have forced Norway to pull the trigger. Last week, the country's largest newspaper revealed a stake in Bet Shemesh Engines. The company makes parts for Israeli fighter jets, the same jets being used in the Gaza war. The revelation caused outrage. Norway's prime minister called the investment worrying. This is not the first time the fund has acted. In 2023, it sold shares in an Israeli energy company and in a telecom operator. Earlier this year, Norway's largest pension fund also divested from several Israeli firms. The wealth fund's guidelines are clear. It can exclude companies involved in serious violations of human rights. It can also act when a country is in armed conflict. The decision is not taken lightly. It goes through a formal process and is approved by the fund's Ethics Council. The fund is no stranger to making bold moves. In 2022, it froze all Russian investments. This was after Moscow's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. It later sold those holdings entirely. As the world's largest sovereign wealth fund, its decisions are closely watched. Politicians follow them. Activists follow them, because its actions can influence markets and send a strong political message. For Israel, the decision is both financial and symbolic. Losing the world's largest investor sends a signal to other funds. It shows that major institutions are willing to link investments to human rights.
There was a time when people called a friend for advice, or maybe even their parents. Then came Google. You could type your problems into a search bar. It was not perfect, but at least you still had to think. Now, Gen Z has gone one step further. They ask a chatbot everything. Should they dump their partner? Should they dye their hair? Should they take the new job? Should they move cities? Every single thing. Gen Z is not just using ChatGPT or any other AI bot, they are texting it like it was the last human on Earth. And OpenAI CEO Sam Altman agrees. He says Gen Z consults ChatGPT for everything, even life-changing decisions. Gen Z uses ChatGPT heavily for things like brainstorming, planning, even to talk through ideas. Around 80% employ it for work-related tasks, 66% use it for ideation. Many turn to it for help with tough work and personal decisions. Some even use it to write their breakup texts, because nothing says closure like a bullet point list from a robot. And it shows in the numbers. Look at this study. It says 70% of Gen Z have AI companions, 70% of them. They talk to them for emotional support. 31% of them say that these conversations are very satisfying, more satisfying than talking to a human. And unlike a human friend, your AI will never tell you that it's too busy. In fact, here's another study. It says 75% of Gen Z believes AI partners could replace human relationship and human companionship. 75%. Some of them even want AI relationships. That's a relationship with an AI bot. 80% of Gen Z users would marry an AI bot. I can see the appeal. No one will tell you to calm down during an argument. And if they do, you can just program them or reprogram them to stop. But here's the big red flag. AI cannot replace real-world relationships because real relationships are messy. Sometimes friends cancel plans, sometimes they take 45 minutes to reply, sometimes they hate your clothes. But the AI friends are always online, they're never bored, and they do not screenshot your rants. Plus, you can build them with exactly the traits you like. It sounds lovely until you realize that they cannot actually show up to bail you out when you're in trouble. Let's be honest, if your car breaks down at midnight, no chatbot is driving over to help you. At best, it will send you a very encouraging haiku. And that's the problem. It's comforting until you realize growth happens when someone tells you no. Without that friction, you're not learning how to navigate real human disagreement. You're just outsourcing it. And if we outsource enough of our lives, soon we'll forget how to do the living part ourselves. Also, it's easy to shrug this off. After all, AI companions are not inherently bad. They can help with loneliness. They can boost confidence. They can even teach social cues to people who struggle with them. The problem is not using them. The problem is forgetting that they're not human. So here's some advice for Gen Z. Use artificial intelligence by all means. It is clearly the future. But stop building emotional dependence on something that is endlessly available. It may seem like a great prospect, but wait till your server goes down. Your BFF Jamie is only buffering. Let's get a little reality check. Real friends forget your birthday, real partners argue with you, and real life is awkward and unpredictable. Sometimes it's amazing, sometimes it's a dumpster fire. But at least it's real, and you cannot control Z it. From a Bollywood star mobbed on the streets of Moscow to yoga in New York to haldi doodh in Los Angeles and Hinglish on the internet, India's influence has traveled far beyond its borders. Some call it soft power, others call it culture. But for centuries, India has been quietly reshaping the world through its ideas, its art, its food, its science, and its belief that differences are not dangerous. This is the story of India's enduring influence. This is the India story.
Full light, start sound, roll camera, action.
The year was 1954. Raj Kapoor had just landed in Moscow. It was the height of the Cold War. The Iron Curtain was firmly in place. Visas were tight, protocols even tighter. The Bollywood actor landed in Moscow without proper documents. Yet somehow he was greeted with a smile. The officers just let him go. So Raj Kapoor stepped out of the airport unsure of what to expect. He was waiting for a taxi when it happened. A crowd started to gather. People began pointing, calling out his name. They were ecstatic, and soon the mob surged. When the taxi finally arrived, his fans were all around it. Some accounts say fans lifted the car onto their shoulders. Such was the craze for Avara, a film that had released in India in 1951. It had struck a deep emotional chord across the Soviet Union. Avara was the story of a poor young man caught between fate and choice, a theme that resonated with the Soviets. The film sold an estimated 64 million tickets in the USSR, the Soviet Union. It remains the third most watched foreign film in Soviet history. The song Avara Hoon was reportedly played at state banquets. Former Russian President Boris Yeltsin was even heard humming it. After this, several Bollywood actors became popular in Russia. Dilip Kumar, Dev Anand, many others, but none captured the Soviet imagination quite like Raj Kapoor. In Russia, he was not just a movie star, he was an emotion. And that tells you about the influence that Bollywood often has. It is one of the largest film industries globally, dominates the Indian box office, making India the third largest movie market in the world. It's the most obvious example of India's soft power. Although India did not stop at cinema, you could say it was only the opening act. Over the decades, India has given the world many gifts. They're not often talked about, but they have quietly reshaped the global imagination. 2,500 years ago, a man sat under a tree. His name was Siddhartha Gautam. And under the shade of that tree, he found enlightenment. He became the Buddha. And with that, India's first global message was born, Buddhism, a path of moderation, of inner peace, of non-violence. King Ashok took it further. After witnessing the horrors of war, he converted to Buddhism. But he did not just convert himself. He converted India's foreign policy too. Emissaries were sent to the whole of Asia to spread the message of Buddhism. They carried with them scrolls, sutras, and stories. Buddhist art, sculpture, and temples took over. It became the world's first global religion, yet its roots were here in India. Today, Buddhism is the world's fourth largest religion, but every path leads back to that one Bodhi tree in Bihar. And then there's the other tree that India gave to the world, the tree of practice. Yoga, or yoga as many call it. The word yoga derives its origins from Sanskrit. It is thousands of years old. Lord Shiva is seen as the first yogi or Adi Yogi. History shows yoga existed in the pre-Vedic period. There's physical evidence of that, even from the Indus Valley civilization. But it really became prominent in the Vedic period. Yoga finds mention in ancient texts, the Vedas and Upanishads. And no, it was never really about flexibility. Yoga was seen as a system to unify the body and the mind, harmonizing oneself with the universe. By the 20th century, spiritual ambassadors brought it to the West. Initially, it was ridiculed as contortionist nonsense. But today, 300 million people practice it daily. It is taught in schools across the globe. It is practiced by athletes, celebrities, and CEOs swear by it. There are countless YouTube tutorials. The United Nations now celebrates June 21st as International Yoga Day. Yoga is a multi-billion-dollar global industry, but its heart remains in India. And then there's Indian English. You heard it right. India was colonized in English, but today, India owns English. More than 300 million Indians speak the language. India is the second largest English-speaking nation in the world, right after the United States of America. But this is not your English, this is Indian English. Words get repurposed, phrases get a makeover, and meanings, well, they get Indianized. If you've heard things like prepone, close the light, or out of station, you've heard Indian English. We've given the language many words, phrases, and expressions, including cousin, brother, time pass, and pass out. And they only make the language richer, we say. Plus, we have Hinglish, a mix of Hindi and English words. Sentences start in one language and end in another. There are no grammar rules. Hinglish is the language of the youth, the streets, the internet, and now even brands, politicians, and movies. And mind you, this is not broken English. This is a collision of cultures. And whether the world likes it or not, it's here to stay because so many of us are speaking it. Next on our list is science and technology. It's often portrayed as a playground for the West. But remember, zero came from India, so did the decimal system. Ancient Indian texts talk about plastic surgery. It's mentioned in the Sushrut Samhita. There are details of complex procedures like rhinoplasty and skin grafting. Fast forward to today, and India is making strides in the field of science and technology again. Look at the Mars orbiter mission, the Mangalyaan. It was successful in the first attempt and cheaper than Hollywood space movies like Gravity. So India reached the Mars for less than the cost of Sandra Bullock's spacewalk. And if you need more examples, look no further than the Silicon Valley. More than a third of engineers there are of Indian origin. Top tech companies are led by Indians. So Indians are not just participating in the tech revolution, they're leading it. Then there's Indian food. Today, chicken tikka masala is widely known as Britain's national dish. But we all know where it came from. Britain may have colonized India, but even then, they couldn't master spices. There are also Gen Z drinks, like turmeric lattes. Americans pay $6 for one, but we all know what it is. It's our humble haldi doodh. And it's not just food. Indian music is making waves across the globe. Indian dance forms are making their mark. They're performed at international festivals. Indian festivals are celebrated across the globe. Diwali is a public holiday in New York. It shows you how the world has folded all of this into its own identity. These are some of India's greatest exports. But here's the greatest one, the biggest gift from India to the world. It's far older and harder to pin down. It's the idea that differences are not dangerous, that chaos is not disorder. It's the concept of unity in diversity. Few countries can really claim this. 22 official languages, 1,600 dialects, 8 major religions, all coexisting for centuries. Diversity is not a challenge in India, it is part of our DNA. There is no single version of Indian culture, because there are 1,000, and yet it works. India did not invent inclusion, but it practiced and aced it before the West even found the word for it. And that idea that differences are not dangerous is beautiful. It's a gift that the world is just beginning to understand and appreciate. Of course, it hasn't been perfect, but it has prevailed. It has evolved, and the West is just waking up to it. They talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. That's what it is called. Guess what? We wrote it into our Constitution back in 1950. We had reservations for the marginalized, schemes for those historically wronged, DEI policies tailored to language, region, and history. India has a long legacy of social equity movements. Today, up to 50% of seats in public universities and government jobs are reserved. Article 15 bans discrimination on the basis of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth. Article 16 guarantees equal opportunity in public employment. In 1993, India set up the National Commission for Backward Classes. In 2021, it passed the OBC bill with near unanimous support. India mandates quotas for women in village councils. More than 1.4 million women hold elected positions at the grassroots levels. And the focus is not just on gender or caste, it's also on tribes, language, religion, even on specific regions. Because India knows this. Inclusion is not a trend, it's the way a country moves forward. And maybe that's the real story of India. For centuries, we have been many things to many people. A mystic land, a spice route, a colonial subject, a software superpower. But at its core, India is a civilizational storyteller. And it has given the world so much: numbers, knowledge, stories, and systems. And yet we never brand it. We don't put flags on ideas. We don't ask for credit. Buddhism is now Asian, yoga is global, zero is for the world to use, diversity is a buzzword. Because real influence does not need a stamp. It moves quietly, it travels far. Some call it soft power, we call it what it is: India's enduring influence. After 10 years, Cristiano Ronaldo has made it official. He has gotten engaged to his long-time partner, Georgina Rodriguez. The internet was very happy for the couple. They showered them with well wishes and love. But amid the frenzy, some users noticed the engagement ring. Or as one user put it, the Philosopher's Stone from Harry Potter. And trust me, the comparison is not off. Jokes aside, it's a big moment for the power couple in football. We wish them well. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Israeli military claims that it blew up Hamas tunnels in Gaza. A massive fire engulfs a yacht off the coast of Spain, and Parisians cool off in the Seine as a heat wave sweeps over France. Finally, we are taking you back in history. On this day in 1990, a nearly complete skeleton of a Tyrannosaurus rex was discovered. The specimen was 65 million years old. The bones were extremely well preserved, with 90% of them intact. The discovery allowed scientists to learn everything they know about the dinosaur. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.